Metroid Prime 4 was announced at E3 this year. I can't believe I'm saying that. Let me say it one more time just to soak it in. Metroid Prime 4 was announced at E3 this year. Okay, so Nintendo may have not shown any gameplay of the upcoming game, which is probably an indication that it's not even in a playable alpha stage at this point, or at least one that they're comfortable showing off. I previously mentioned Metroid Prime 4 in my favorite moments of E3 video, which you can check out if you're interested in seeing what else I'm excited for this coming years, but today I want to focus more on Metroid Prime 4 and what I personally would like to see from this new installment into this incredible series. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Number 1 on the list, co-op. While I never got around to picking up Federation Force on the 3DS, I did like the idea of a Metroid game with online co-op. I'm not entirely sure if I want the whole campaign to be playable with someone online or a standalone co-op mission mode. All I know is that I would love to see a real Metroid Prime game with co-op exploration. Perhaps some of you believe that the Metroid games are all about figuring out these giant labyrinths by yourself, and that's the way that they need to be played and experienced. And, I can respect that. But the gameplay of Metroid and the enemy designs would make for an excellent co-op horde mode at the very least. All right, number 2, more horror elements to the game. I believe that this series' atmosphere and overall feel would go a long way if more horror elements were added to the game. The Metroid Prime trilogy was already a tad eerie due to exploring a giant, dark, murky world all by yourself, but there was never much more suspense to the game than that. If Metroid Prime 4 added more darker levels with the good use of lighting and creepy enemy design, kind of like Dead Space, this would add a whole new layer of depth to the game. Let me say that I'm not suggesting they turn Metroid Prime into a horror game, but I would love for the game to have its moments of really cranking up your adrenaline with more than just the excellent boss fights. All right, number 3 on the list, competitive multiplayer. Nintendo has never really had a go-to competitive online shooter before, like on PlayStation or Xbox or Steam. They do have the relatively new Splatoon series, and while I do think Splatoon 2 has a lot of promise acquiring a decent competitive scene, it doesn't have the same fast-paced, hyper-competitive appeal to it as games like Counter-Strike or Halo. Metroid Prime, however, could totally have that appeal, assuming that the implementation is there. I really want to see a full-fledged multiplayer for Metroid Prime 4 with different modes such as Team Deathmatch, One Life Search and Destroy, hell, maybe even an Aliens vs. Hunters mode where one team plays as Samus and the Federation Force and the other plays as Ridley and a bunch of other grunt aliens. Just think about that sounds awesome. Samus and Ridley would have more health and certain special abilities that the other players would not, and players would be rewarded with playing as these characters in the next rounds, assuming they rack up a really good score on the current round that they're in, or something like that. Damn, that sounds awesome. Nintendo, please? Number 4, difficulty. I know, who would have guessed that I would be asking for a harder game, but I mean, come on. That would be awesome, would it not? The best thing about Nintendo games is that they are very easy for almost everybody to pick up and play, but only some of them are actually difficult to master. Looking at you, Punch-Out! I want this to be the case for Metroid Prime 4. I do not want other players to feel alienated or too intimidated to pick up and play the game. I just really want this game to supply an adequate challenge. A lot of Nintendo games tend to have a focus on fun for the whole family, which is awesome. But I believe that Metroid Prime series should be one of the more hardcore games Nintendo has to offer. They should not be afraid of pushing away some casual players to deliver a very solid hardcore gaming experience. I think that offering the hardcore gamer a good challenge through waves of tough enemies, complex puzzles, and larger-than-life boss fights is an excellent way of showing the more hardcore gamer that Metroid Prime 4 means business. I mean, just look at Dark Souls and how it was marketed. The words "prepare to die" were on the back, and instead of scaring people away, it encouraged millions of players to buy the game and beat it. Alright, all in all, I am beyond excited about Metroid Prime 4, and call me a sucker, but I will definitely be buying it on day one, even if none of these wishes actually happen. And I highly encourage all of you Switch owners whom are interested in the game to do the same. We need to show Nintendo that we want more games like this in the future, specifically Metroid games, because I love the series. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the other types of content I make, check out my Retro Virgin Plays Castlevania series. This is the series where I play retro games that I've never played before. Castlevania 1 on the NES is way harder than I thought it was going to be, that's for sure. But most importantly, go play some hard games.